Have you ever had somebody betray your trust either by doing something or saying something or an action that made you really question the relationship and you felt like you had been betrayed or stabbed in the back? Were you able to make amends and work around it, or is the betrayal still lingering out there? Hi, my name is K.A Bloch, and I am the award winning author and poet of 4 books that consist of poetry and prose. My channel is called The Practical Poet, and each week on my channel, I feature a different video poetry reading from one of my 4 books, or maybe on occasion some new material. I also have a blog called thepracticalpoet.com, and on there you can find written copies of all of the poems that I've posted so far. And most of them, I have done a video poetry reading, not all of them, but I am getting around to that. So I hope that you'll check that out. Lately, my poetry readings have been about the topic of betrayal and forgiveness and trying to make amends and trying to repair relationships. So a couple weeks ago, I featured a video poetry reading of a poem called Humble Pie. And that was written from the perspective of the person who said something that they instantly wished that they could take back. They knew that it hurt the person's feelings, and they saw the look of shock on the person's face, and they immediately tried to, grab the words back from in the air and, kind of hit that edit undo button. And they had to go to the person, eat a little bit of humble pie or eat a little bit of crow and try to repair the relationship. Last week, I did a video poetry reading of a poem called Forgiveness from my 3rd book called Gather Seeds of Hope. And forgiveness was written from the perspective of the person who heard those words. They were the injured party, the flip side of humble pie. And so they had to make the decision on whether or not they were going to accept this person's apology. And throughout the poem, you can hear them kind of working through the process, because going through the different stages of betrayal when you've been betrayed and you're trying to process, it's a little bit like processing the stages of grief, right? When you lose somebody unexpectedly, or even if it's a planned illness or something like that, you still have to process it and you still have to move through different stages. And sometimes you think that you're worked through all the stages, and you backslide and you find that you're back to being angry, or you're still a little bit pissed off or skeptical of the person or what have you. So just because you move through the different stages doesn't mean that you stay there, that you can always backslide. So this poem is from my latest book. The poem that I'm featuring this week on my channel is from my latest book called Sow Seeds of Wisdom, and there might be a little bit of glare on there. But this is a poem called The Thing About Betrayal. And this is about a woman who has been betrayed. So in Humble Pie that I referenced earlier, we knew that the person had said something to another person that hurt their feelings, and that they had to make amends. And then in forgiveness, like I mentioned, the person had to make a decision whether or not to forgive. In this poem, we do know the source of the betrayal, and I'm not going to reveal it because it does come in with the video poetry reading. But betrayal can take many forms, and some are greater than others. So think back to like when you were a little kid and maybe you first experienced betrayal. Maybe it was when you learned there was no Santa Claus, and you learned that your parents had been lying to you, or there's no Easter Bunny or Tooth Fairy, and you're like, wait, what? You've been lying to me this whole time? Or maybe, you didn't get an invitation to the 5th grade birthday party for one of the kids that everybody was invited to, and you feel a little bit slighted and you feel hurt by that. Or maybe like in junior high, you learn that a couple of your really close friends in your little clique had been talking badly about you behind your back. And those are all, sources of betrayal. And even though they happen when we're younger, I'm not trying to minimize them. They hurt, to different levels when we're, no matter what age we are, betrayal hurts in any shape or form. But as we get a little bit older, I feel like the betrayal can become a little bit more serious. And in this particular poem, it's a pretty serious transgression. And the person that's injured here needs to work through those different stages. And like I mentioned, there are different stages of grief that we go through when we lose somebody. And there's different stages of betrayal. And probably one of the hardest stages to work through is just the anger. It's really, really hard to get over that anger. And we may find that we carry a grudge about that person. We just can't let it go. And we keep ruminating about it. And in the video poetry reading for forgiveness last week, I talked about how we sometimes hold on to those grudges and we just ruminate about them. And it really doesn't get us anywhere, except, it swirls up all the negativity around us. Negativity begets negativity. So when our thoughts go to the negative, we tend to pick up the negative vibes and things, in the universe. I'm a big believer in the law of attraction. I think that what you put out there comes back to you in kind. And, if we have nothing but negative thoughts swirling around in our head because we can't let things go, it's just going to pick up other negative vibes and stuff, like I mentioned, or people that are close to us may start to pick up on our negativity and they may start to distance themselves from us. So there's like a rolling ball effect, or like a snowball effect of the betrayal. It may not just start to impact you, it may start to impact other people around you because they realize that you are just not letting go of this, you can't get over it. And they may suggest therapy, they may suggest talking to somebody, or different ways to kind of process the betrayal. So betrayal often results in loss of trust. You may no longer trust this person with, if they said something to you, you may wonder, where did this come from? Where did this hateful or negative thing that they said to me, where did that come from? And are they going to say it again? And so you may feel like, maybe if you're laughing with them, sometime and you're letting your guard down a little bit, are they going to zap you with some kind of a comment again? Or, can you trust them with that? So there is that lack of trust there, and that takes a long time to build, and it's very easily destroyed. It's kind of like money in the bank, right? It takes us so long to save money, but boy, we can sure blow it in one weekend of, a shopping spree or what have you, or a car repair or something like that. And trust is like that. It takes a long time to build up, but it can be very easily destroyed. And once it's destroyed, yeah, it can be rebuilt again, but it's a long and arduous process. And it takes a very long time. And I feel like even if you do make a conscious effort that you're going to work on the trust and you're going to get over the betrayal and you're going to start to rebuild whatever the relationship is that you have with this person, you're going to try to rebuild it and hope for the best. I feel like there's always going to be a little bit of that distrust kind of lingering in the back of your mind. It's a little bit like sand when you go to the beach and it sticks to you, and you think that you vacuumed your car, but then weeks later you still are finding sand in the vehicle. And it's a little bit like that. You think that you've processed it, you think that you've moved past it and that you're starting to trust again, and then something will happen and you're right, kind of sliding back into those stages again, maybe the anger stage, or the mistrust stage, or the questioning everything kind of stage. There's really that I'm aware of, there's no like set stages, like with the stages of grief. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, that came up with the different stages of grief. I'm not sure that there necessarily is one for betrayal, but I'm feeling like anger and mistrust and skepticism and all of those are all a part of it, and all very negative things that we have to deal with in order to start to process and to move forward. So again, trust can be rebuilt. It is a long process, and again, I think we're always kind of on our guard in that situation. Maybe not forever, but for the first couple months for sure, maybe even a year or two in, we might still be looking over our shoulder. We might be waiting, when is the other shoe going to drop, or when is this person going to stab me in the back again, or say something hurtful, or do something hurtful. And so is the relationship ever really the same after a betrayal? Or has it shifted and you just have to kind of move into a new type of relationship? You may never get back what you had, but maybe you just need to move forward and start to build on a new foundation. And sometimes that's the best that we can do. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get into the video poetry reading. I feel like I say this every week, but this is a little bit of a longer poem. Most of my poems are very long. They tell a little bit of a story. I do some storytelling through poetry. And so this is a longer one. This involves a woman who witnesses something. And so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into the video poetry reading of the thing about betrayal from Sow Seeds of Wisdom. Before I do that, though, quick sip of tea to soothe my voice. It's a very cold and damp day here. Even though we're in April, it still has that damp feeling outside. So it's kind of cold and gray and gloomy. So this nice hot cup of tea feels really good on my throat. And I'm going to put my glasses on. And here we go with the video poetry reading of The Thing About Betrayal. And by the way, if you don't want to stick around for the full video poetry reading, you can find the written copy along with the backstory of this poem, The Thing About Betrayal, on my blog at thepracticalpoet.com/blog. And under the books tab on that same site, you can also find the link to all of my books, including my latest book, Sow Seeds of Wisdom. So here we go, The Thing About Betrayal. A woman was running to and fro, conducting her weekly chores. She was focused on her shopping list and making it through the stores. She stopped to catch her breath and then looked up to see her husband and her best friend standing closer than should be. She watched them from a distance as her friend tossed back her hair. She knew that there was no way they could see her standing there. Her friend tilted back her head, laughing loudly at his joke. She put her hand upon his chest and lightly began to stroke. The woman felt her anger build, and she felt ready to attack. But first, she knew she must dislodge the knife inside her back. She felt burdened by betrayal. Her senses all were reeling. She could not begin to process all the emotions she was feeling. But then she got her bearings. Deep breaths helped calm her nerves. She looked over at her friend, all flowing hair and sexy curves. She thought maybe it was innocent, and she'd blown it out of proportion. Perhaps her insecurities had led to her distortion. She denied what she was seeing, shrugging it off as misperception. She couldn't believe these two people would engage in such deception. Perhaps the flirting was all in fun, and nothing was amiss, until she saw them both lean in and share a loving kiss. Such important people in her life surely would not deceive. If she had not seen it with her own eyes, she never would believe. But here they were, just feet away, locked in a warm embrace. Along with the knife inside her back, she felt slapped across the face. The thing about betrayal, whether it be from friend or foe, is that it could be happening, and you may never know. Betrayal can take place easily, right before our eyes. Betrayal may be unfolding, and we might not realize. Betrayal can take many forms: lying, cheating, greed. When a friend betrays your trust, this is someone you don't need. For a true friend would never hurt you or rearrange your life. A friend would never stab your back with a proverbial knife. Trust is earned. Trust takes time, but in minutes it can be gone, leaving you to question why this person did you wrong. But trust can be rebuilt slowly, over months or even years. The healing often comes with anger and usually with tears. There will be moments of understanding followed by hours of frustration, but in the end, rebuilding may lead to a much stronger foundation. But the thing about betrayal is that part of it remains. You might find you can't completely clean up all the stains. You shovel and you burrow and you try to fill the hole. You try your best to pull out all the splinters from your soul. Yet some pieces of betrayal may always linger in your mind. You try hard to move forward, but your subconscious hits rewind. Another thing about betrayal, it sticks upon your skin. You try to wash it away, but it lingers like a sin. So even though you try not to, you're always bracing for impact as you try to move on forward while you also watch your back. So that was the video poetry reading of The Thing About Betrayal. So now we know what the betrayal was. This woman witnessed an affair, and this is a double betrayal. This is a double whammy between her best friend and her husband. Can you even imagine what the horror that she must feel? And you can hear her shock and her disbelief and her denial. And denial is one of the first stages of grief when we lose a loved one, and evidently it is one of the first stages here that this woman starts to process. She's like, no, I'm not seeing this. This is not right. Something isn't right. They're just maybe ran into each other and they're just exchanging pleasantries. And until she really witnesses the woman lean in and they share a nice passionate kiss, and she really can't deny it anymore, even though she kind of tries to deny it still. She really can't, and she feels like she's been had the knife put in her back, and she feels like she's been slapped across the face as she tries to absorb this betrayal between two of the closest people in her life. And when with a best friend, we tell our best friends a lot of things. And so she probably felt maybe even triply betrayed, because she had probably told her best friend things about her marriage and things about her relationship. And the whole time this woman was cheating with the same person behind her back. So that is just a horrible thing that this woman had to go through. So, but it does sound like she makes the decision to try to amend the relationship. She tries to rebuild the trust. It talks about in the poem how trust can be rebuilt slowly over months or years, and so it does sound like maybe she's trying to repair the relationship and rebuild the trust. But there are it says that there's hours of frustration, but in the end, rebuilding can lead to a stronger foundation. And even with the forgiveness that I talked about last week, with the poem Forgiveness, I talked about it, or even in Humble Pie, about when we hurt somebody and we have to go and make amends to them, or if we're the injured person, if we can have that dialogue with that person, and if we can say, like, hey, why did this happen? Or have you been feeling this way for a long time and it finally came out in your words or your actions? Sometimes it can lead to a stronger foundation. Sometimes we can come to a better understanding, and just having that dialogue, sometimes just opening up that dialogue. Pardon me. And by the way, I do apologize. I stumbled over a couple words in that poem. There's a couple big words in there, and my brain just got a little bit ahead of me there, and I stumbled. So I do apologize for that. But we what was I talking about here with the betrayal and rebuilding the trust? And sometimes things can lead to a better, stronger foundation. That is the best possible outcome that we can hope for. And we probably are going to backslide. We're only human. We're probably going to always maybe have a little bit of doubt or a question. Ideally, it would be great if we could put it behind us, but do we ever? Or are things still going to linger in the back of our mind? So that is the thing about betrayal. It never really goes away, I don't think. I'd like it to, but that's something that we're just going to have to keep working on in our relationships, right? So with that, I'm going to go ahead and leave you. I thank you so much for joining me for this video poetry reading, the thing about betrayal. The written copy, again, can be found on my blog at thepracticalpoet.com/blog, and then look for the poem, The Thing About Betrayal. And also, I would hope that you would check out Forgiveness and Humble Pie. If not for the full video poetry readings, maybe you just read the poem, and kind of wraps up here a little bit with the thing about betrayal. I think I'm going to move on from this topic and get into some different topics as well. So with that, I hope that you will check out the blog and the video poetry readings. I will link them all below in the description on this video. And if you like what you heard and you want to hear more, I hope that you hit the like and subscribe button. And each week when I do a video poetry reading, you will be notified. And with that, it is Friday. I'm going to go ahead and kick off the weekend. I hope you do the same wherever it is. I hope your weather is wonderful here in the United States, especially in the South. They've had some horrible flooding and tornadoes and just all kinds of things going on. So wherever you are, I hope that you're safe and sound and warm. And we'll chat again real soon. Thanks. Bye.